Hello, thank you so much for checking out this new message from Ridgepoint. So whether you watch with us every week or maybe you're relatively new to our church family, you picked a good week to be here. Today, our lead pastor, Pastor Brent, is kicking off a new 6-week teaching series called Relatable, all about how we can honor Jesus and successfully navigate all of the tricky things that come with our most important relationships. These next few weeks, we'll be tackling the important topics of marriage, parenting, singleness, and how to be a good friend or a neighbor, all from the perspective of a biblical worldview. Now for this first week, the day that we're recording and releasing this is Mother's Day, so of course we're going to start with moms. And look, we know Mother's Day can be a tricky or a complicated day for a lot of us. Maybe you're a mother, maybe you want to be a mother, or maybe you have a really rocky relationship with your mom. On the front end, we want you to know that we get all those things are messy and complicated. It's very relatable, but it's also possible to redeem the messiness and find hope and progress in even our most difficult relationships. So for much more, let's get to Pastor Brent now for week 1 of Relatable.
I'm ready to preach. So let me pray, and then we'll dive in. Father, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for the Bible, which we ever believe to be our true authority for how to live, for what to believe, and how to get to heaven, and all of that. And so as I speak out of this Bible, I pray that you, despite my weakness, would reveal your strength. In Jesus' name, amen. Happy Mother's Day. Mother's Day, a little bit of Mother's Day trivia. It became an official holiday 110 years ago in 1914, thanks to a certain Anna Jarvis, a lady who tried to rally a bunch of people and politicians around mothers and thanking them for the sacrifices that they made for their children. And so Mother's Day became official in 1914. Interestingly, Anna Jarvis never married, never had children, and she later came to regret what she had done, all the commercialization of Mother's Day, and she spent the last part of her life trying to get it taken off the calendar. Didn't work, you know. It was now a part entrenched in American life, and so it is here to stay. So happy Mother's Day. Now, having said that, we also need to be reminded that it is not the happiest days for a lot of people. There are people sitting in the room here for whom this is their first Mother's Day without their mother, that their mother passed away this last year. It's a hard day for those ladies who they so desperately want to be a mother, and they're unable to conceive for whatever reason. It's a hard day for a lot of mothers who have lost their kids. Miscarriages, their child died before them, out of order, like the parents are supposed to die first, right? It's a hard day for a lot of mothers for whom they live with constant regret, or what did I do wrong? Their kids are estranged from them, in rebellion to them or God. And so I just want to acknowledge that it's a hard day for a lot of people. And we all put on our smile and say, Happy Mother's Day. And for those of you for whom it's not the happiest of days, I genuinely wish God's peace on you. Okay? And I do have a Mother's Day story. We're starting a series on relationships, and today I hope to encourage you mothers, shore you up, remind you of the gift you are, and for us to relate well to you. So I do have a mother's story from 2 Kings chapter 4, so 2,900 years ago or so, around 850 BC. The key characters are Elisha, this powerful prophet, and his servant Gehazi. Now, they lived in Mount Carmel, which was 20 miles in northern Israel, 20 miles from Shunem, where a wealthy woman, her husband, and their son lived. Okay? Our story begins in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8. One day, Elisha went to the town of Shunem. A wealthy woman lived there, and she urged him to come to her home for a meal. After that, whenever he passed that way, he would stop there for something to eat. Elisha was a well-known prophet. And whenever he got into a town, hey, there's Elisha, the powerful man of God. And I don't know if this wealthy woman was shopping or walking down the street. She sees Elisha. She shows some leadership. Hey, do you want to come over and eat supper with me and my husband? And that began the regular practice that whenever he stopped through Shunem, he would stop for a good home-cooked meal with the wealthy woman from Shunem and her husband. But a couple things, by the way. It's interesting in what was a overwhelmingly patriarchal society in that day that she was mentioned first, and she was described as a wealthy woman. The other thing is we never find out her name, or the name of her husband, or the name of their son. Nameless they remain, and so she is the wealthy woman, the woman from Shunem, the Shunammite woman, okay? So that's all we know. But her hospitality didn't stop with food. One day she said to her husband, honey, let's build a room on our roof, and it's for Elisha, the prophet of God, and when he comes through, let's just not feed him food. Let's, like, if he wants to spend the night, he can do that, and let's furnish it with a bed and a table and a lamp. And so that happened. And now, whenever Elisha came through Shunem, he would stop for a meal, and he could spend the night in his own free personal Airbnb. Now, naturally, he wanted to thank her for that. And he said, hey, Gehazi, go thank this wealthy woman, this friend of ours, and ask her what we can do to return kindness. And so he did just that. He says, thank you so much for your hospitality. Is there anything we can do to return our kindness? And then this line, can we put in a good word for you to the king or the commander of the army? Evidently, Elisha had friends in high places. And he, in the previous chapter, he had gained the loyalty of King Jehoram and the army commander. And so they're shooting the moon when they go to this wealthy woman and they say, hey, what can we get for you? And dream big, because we can always tap into the king, my friend. We can always tap into the commander of the army. So we'll get whatever you want. But her answer was, I don't need anything. Which is always the problem for our mothers and parents and people who have everything they need and want. What do you buy them for Christmas, right? But she said, I really don't need anything. Then Gehazi, the servant, said to Elisha, you know what? They don't have any kids. And they're too old to have kids, but she doesn't have any kids. And so Elisha decided to give to the wealthy woman from Shunem something she didn't even ask for, a son. And he made a rather bold promise. He said to her, next year at this time, this is verse 16, next year at this time you will be holding a son in your arms. Now, the surprising thing is she didn't say, oh, thank you, that's the one, I can't wait, you're so, she didn't like explode in gratitude. Quite the opposite. She said, no, my Lord. Oh, man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that. Of course she wanted to be a mother. But apparently she had already walked the long, hard journey of either resigning herself to the reality that she would go to her death without any kids, or she had walked the long, hard road of coming to a place of contentment in being childless. And so her response is, no, don't do that to me, because it's not going to work out that well. I don't want you to dangle this carrot in front of me and then something bad and dash my hopes. No, please don't do this. But the unspoken request for a child came true. And within a year, the wealthy woman from Shunem was holding a son in her arms. Happy Mother's Day. So fast forward 8, 9, 10, 11 years, we're not sure, but now their boy is old enough to help his dad in the harvest. And so he's out in the field helping with the harvest, and tragedy strikes. He gets this splitting headache, and he cries out, "My head hurts, my head hurts." Now, it's likely, we don't know for certain, but it's likely that he was suffering from meningitis, which is an inflammation of the lining around the brain. It's dangerous, it moves fast, and its primary symptom is a splitting headache, the worst a person could ever have. And so this little 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old boy is crying out in the fields, suddenly, "My head hurts, my head hurts." Now, there are no hospitals. There's no Advil. There's no ER rooms. So what's a father to do? We need to get you to your mother, right? And so the servant took the boy home, verse 20, and his mother held him on her lap. But around noontime, he died. Just picture that. She's rocking him. He's just crying and in pain, and she's putting a wet washcloth on his forehead, and she's kissing him, and she's saying, "Oh, baby, I'm sorry. It'll be okay." But around noontime, it wasn't okay, and he died. Now, normally, family and friends would be called to start the grieving process. In Jewish culture, they'd hire mourners and wailers, and funeral plans would begin. But this mom, she refused to accept her son's death. And maybe, just maybe, she believed somehow he would live again. But without telling anybody that her son had died, she carried him up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, verse 21. And then she shut the door and left him there. She called her servant and said, "Hey, saddle up the donkey, and we're heading the 20 miles to Mount Carmel. We got to find Elisha, the one who started this whole thing." And so she saddles up the donkey, and she gets on, and her and the servant start charging to to Mount Carmel as fast as they could. "Hurry, don't stop for anyone, don't stop for anything." Evidently, donkeys have a top running speed of 15 miles per hour. Okay? They can't hold that for 20 miles. So what did this trip take? 2 hours? 2.5 hours? But as she's arriving close to Mount Carmel, Elisha sees her. And he says to Gehazi, he says, "Is that not the wealthy woman from Shunem? What is she? Go quickly, find out if all is well with her husband, and with her son. All is well." That Hebrew word is shalom, peace. Go find out, Gehazi, what's wrong? Find out if all is shalom. And so Gehazi goes and he says, Is all at peace with you and your husband and your son?" And her response, "All is well." All is shalom. Now, maybe she was speaking out of faith that it would be well. Maybe it was her way of saying, "I don't want to talk to you. I got to go to Elisha. You're not the reason I came. I don't want to share this information with you before I share it with Elisha." But she says all is well, and she goes to Elisha, and she erupts with the story about her son, and she clings to him, no doubt sobbing, like shoulder shaking, sobbing. At this point, Gehazi, whom we will see more not so good things in chapter 5 if we were to go there, Gehazi rudely pulled this grieving mother away as she was trying to hug Elisha and find some comfort. And Elisha rebuked him. And in their conversation, this wealthy woman from Shunem spoke directly to Elisha. I don't know if she was mad. I don't know if she was blaming him, but she says this, verse 28, "Did I ask you for a son, my Lord? And didn't I tell you like 10 years ago, don't deceive me and get my hopes up? But look at what's happened. It's exactly what I thought would happen. You gave me a gift and then you took him away." Elisha instructed Gehazi to race back to Shunem. And he gave his servant his own staff and said, "Lay it on the boy's head." And presumably he would be raised alive. Now, on the head, his head had hurt. That was the point of death. So maybe that would be the point of life. Why did he hand his own staff to his servant? Moses pulled off a couple of plagues with his staff. He parted the Red Sea with his staff. So Gehazi races ahead, and Elisha and the Shunammite woman begin the 20-mile return trip back to her home. Gehazi did what he was told, but it didn't work. He laid the staff on the boy, and nothing happened. Scholars wonder why or what. It certainly looks like Elisha was assuming and believing that Gehazi would pull off this miracle, but he didn't. I think that it's most likely that his wickedness simply got between him and the miracle, that his rudeness to the grieving woman. In chapter 5, the next chapter, he directly defies the command of Elisha, goes around his back, reveals his greedy character, goes to a man that Elisha had said, "No, we're not taking any of your money." And Gehazi went around his back and did what Elisha said not to do. By this time, Elisha and the Shunammite woman arrive at her home. Verse 32. When Elisha arrived, the child was indeed dead, lying there on the prophet's bed. That is Elisha, went in alone, said to the mother, "Stay out." "No, it's just me." Went in alone and shut the door behind him and prayed to the Lord. What did he say? "Lord, why? No, I know. Did we cause all this? Like, why do we do? Oh, Lord, you have to resurrect this boy. We can't, like this, the story can't end here." Did Elisha pray for a minute? Did he pray for 5 minutes? Did he pray for an hour? Verse 34, then Elisha lay down on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, his hands on the child's hands. And as he stretched out on him, the child's body began to grow warm again. This boy had been dead for 6, maybe 7 hours, cold. But he wasn't waking up. Elisha got up. This is interesting. I don't know what's behind it. Elisha got up, walked back and forth across the room once, and then stretched himself out again on the child. This time the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. You didn't see the sneezes coming, did you? Like, what's with that? So I called a doctor, and I said, okay, if it's meningitis or whatever, and he dies and dead for 6, 7, 8 hours, and now, okay, what's with the sneezes? And the doctor said, well, maybe it's because the nerve that triggers the tickle that makes you sneeze, the nerve is deep in the nasal cavity right at the lining of the brain. And maybe when that meningitis was healed, that triggered that nerve, and he sneezed 7 times. Then Elisha summoned Gehazi, call the child's mother. And when she came in, Elisha said, here, take your son. And don't you think he had a smile on his face? She fell at his feet and bowed before him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Then she took her son in her arms and carried him downstairs. The end. And for the wealthy woman from Shunem, that day was a very happy Mother's Day. So what do we do with that story? Romans 15:4 says that the ancient stories are there to instruct us. Oh, it's an interesting story. It has some intrigue. It's exciting. But what do we do with it? So can we start here? Let's just be thankful. Can we just muster up some gratitude? Can we see the Lord's mercies that are new every morning? What if we said, I want to say thank you to someone every single day for the rest of my life? I just want to be thankful. Elisha and Gehazi were so thankful for the hospitality of the Shunammite woman. They expressed that. She was overwhelmed with gratitude, not surprisingly, when her son was raised back to life. Can we just be thankful? And can we say thank you to Mom? You knew that was coming in a Mother's Day sermon. And by the way, it doesn't land well if it's a once-a-year thank you, just for what it's worth. Can we express gratitude to our moms regularly and just be thankful? Now, to you mothers, I want to thank you for what I'm just calling your fierce love for your kids. I could say there's nothing like a mother's love for their kids. I just want to say thank you. You have a fierce love. This Shunammite woman, her son had just died, and whatever happened in her soul, I don't know, but she refused to accept his death, and she walked the 20 miles, or donkeyed the 20 miles to Mount Carmel. She hauls Elisha back every mile along the way. She's saying, you better fix this. You did this, so her fierce mama bear, protective love for her kids. There's nothing like the fierce love of a mother. Until you lift your eyes to heaven and you see the fierce love of a father. If the Shunammite woman went 20 miles, then 40 miles out of her fierce love, Jesus traveled from heaven to earth out of his fierce love. But still, there's nothing like the love of a mother. Another thing, there's nothing like the comforting arms of a mother. If you've got a crying kid and mom's there and dad's there, it's going to mom. Right? I was in the upper lobby here a couple of months ago. It was after a Wednesday night. All of our activities, kids everywhere. It was wonderful. A dad had come to pick up his kid. I was actually talking to the dad, and his little 4-year-old was in the upper lobby, and he was running, and he looked at his dad, and he ran full tilt into one of those metal waste paper baskets out there. Not one of the plastic ones, the metal one. And it was a crash, and I'm laughing, and I feel sorry for him. He ended up with a little welt on his head, and he's screaming, and I'm telling you, the dad, tender, comforting, picks him up. The dad is doing everything right, but what's the kid screaming? I want my mommy. Dads, you're just not good enough. None of us are good enough. There is nothing like the comfort of a mom's arms. This story has a happy ending. And it's nice when we can tell a story and wrap it up and put a nice bow around it and everyone, okay, that's nice. But it's not like we don't have lots of stories that are seeming to end otherwise. So many in our church who have had miscarriages or their children have died of cancer or a car accident or something before them. And like I said, that's backwards. It's not right. And I don't know of any kid that's been dead for 6, 7, 8 hours and then came back to life again. So this story has a happy ending. But a lot of our stories don't seem to be heading that way. And if you, as a mother, are on that long 20-mile walk to Mount Carmel, and you're saying, God, why don't you do something? And it doesn't seem to happen, I pray for some peace. I pray that you'll dig deep and trust that the same God that saved your soul is not going to abandon you. I don't have any good answers that don't sound pat, but don't give up. Don't give up. And I'm sorry for your pain. Keep loving with a fierce love, okay? Keep loving. If your child is in rebellion or there's estrangement, just keep loving with your own fierce love. I also know there's a lot of pressure on moms to succeed. And they say that moms' brains are like spaghetti and men's brains are like waffles. We compartmentalize. And they say that women, and I'm so sorry, it's a bad life, but your minds never stop moving. So I've seen brain scans of a man at rest, just sitting there, a brain scan, and a brain scan of a woman at rest. And the man's brain shows very little brain activity. It's true. It's true. But the woman at rest, there's still synapses sparking. She doesn't ever stop. And so ladies, if you do ever look at your husband and say, what are you thinking about? And they say, nothing. They might be telling the truth. Like there's nothing going on up there. There's just nothing, okay? But you ladies, your mind is going and you do feel this pressure to be the perfect mom and you don't feel good enough and your mind is filled, sometimes obsessively so, with your regrets or your failures or what did I do wrong or I'm not good enough. And I do pray that you'll be able to recognize the voices of the enemy who is telling you that you're not good enough, and you will kick that to the gutter somehow and say, God, I know that I'm your beloved daughter. I have a fierce love for my child, and I need you, I need you, I need you. One last thing. Jewish tradition holds that the Shunammite boy raised to life, grew up to become Habakkuk, the prophet. So moms, I want you to believe in your kids. I want you to dream big for them. I want you to inspire them to do great things for God. God created them, and God called them for this exact moment in time. Their life isn't a coincidence. It's not an accident. It's not random. And moms, it's easy to say, I know, but I don't want you to be scared for your children. I instead want you to be honored that God called you to be their mom right now. Don't let your fear steal their greatness. Don't let your fear steal the greatness that God has placed in your children. Don't feel sorry for them. Don't fear for your kids because the world that they're growing up in is different than the world you grew up in. Raise them in the power of God. Train them in the authority of His Word. God is not up in heaven, scratching His head, rattled and nervous about what's going to happen next. He's not worried about what to do with this mess of a world that we live in. He has an army he is raising up to push back darkness and to make his name known. And your children are part of that story. Believe in them. Raise them to do great things for God. Be a courageous mom. It's in you. I know it's in you. So raise them to do great things for God. Let's pray. Father, I pray comfort for the mothers who are discouraged. I pray comfort for the mothers who seem to hear the voices screaming at them about how they're not good enough, or they've messed up, or what they did wrong. I pray comfort for the mothers who are grieving their children who have passed away. I pray comfort for moms whose children are estranged and in rebellion. Would you please assure them that they're doing good and to keep loving their kids with a fierce love? I pray that you would give them courage to raise their children to do great things for God. So, Father, thank you for family with all of its drama and heartache, and we've all said things and done things and all that we regret. But I pray your inordinate blessing over the moms in this room. Comfort them, encourage them, give them courage, because you made them the mom of their kids on purpose for great things. Amen.
Thanks to Pastor Brent for that message. Thanks to you for watching or listening. And hey, one more time, happy Mother's Day to all the moms with us today. We are so grateful for you. Now, whether you typically watch online or attend in person or some hybrid of the two, before we let you go today, I wanted to let you know about a class that is going on right now that has been super helpful to literally hundreds of us here at Ridgepoint. The last 3 weeks, our friend Nasser Al-Khatani has been leading a class called How to Experience the Bible. If you've been around Ridgepoint for a while, you probably know and remember Nasser. He is a missionary, a scholar, and a very gifted teacher who has shared here many times over the years. Now, if you don't know Nasser, he is a former Muslim who was born and raised in the Middle East, and he has a pretty amazing testimony of complete transformation. And now he is a devoted follower of Jesus who travels around the world sharing the good news of the gospel. His unique perspective and background provides some really helpful insight into the Bible. For those of us raised in modern American evangelical churches, there's honestly so much history and context and background that we just haven't been taught. And this insight can really help bring the Bible to life with a fresh perspective. So if you're relatively new to Christianity, or maybe you've been studying the Bible for decades, I think Nasser's class will be really helpful to you. And plus, he's just a very engaging and interesting teacher that we think you'll enjoy. So I encourage you to carve out some time and watch the 3 weeks of this class on our Ridgepoint YouTube channel. You can head over to youtube.com/RidgepointWichita, or you can search for Ridgepoint Wichita using the YouTube app on a mobile device or smart TV and find the playlist called How to Experience the Bible. We think you're really going to enjoy it. And now as we wrap up, we've been really looking forward to this relatable teaching series, so I invite you to make plans now to join us again next week, wherever you're watching or listening right now, as Pastor Brent will be back with a message all about marriage. So we hope to see you then.